leader of Devon County Council. I'm chairing today because the leader is on annual leave. The usual announcements at the start of the meeting: please mute your microphone, turn off your camera unless you're speaking. It's being live streamed. Please talk into your microphone, that's particularly important. The chair assumes that members have read all the papers in advance, therefore please do not share any presentations on screen until the item commences. Turn off your video until you want to speak. For that one person, well, there's nobody actually attending remotely. And please, if you could, just stick to the code of addressing each other by councillor, please. And the reason to not use first names is it's quite difficult for those following on the live stream. So item 1 is apologies, and we have apologies from Councillor Brazil. Declarations of interest. Members, please could you declare interest at the appropriate time in the meeting, which is when the item is taken. Your other interests are registered and therefore the public to look at. We have the minutes of our last meeting on the 10th of December. Members, are you happy for me to sign those as a correct record, or would anybody like to raise any items concerned? No, in which case, thank you very much. I shall duly try and find the signature page. I shall get round to that in a minute. Thank you. Item 4 is items requiring urgent attention. There are none to our knowledge today. Announcements, 2 really. First of all, I think it's our first major gathering together, so happy new year. May I be the last person to wish you all happy new year sincerely, and it's lovely to see everybody here. Also very glad to welcome back esteemed figure John Hart, who is attending the meeting in his capacity as a co-opted member of the Council's Standards Committee to observe and monitor compliance with the Council's ethical governance framework. If you see his pen moving, be very afraid. So welcome, John. Oh God, he's got it in his hand already. Okay, thank you very much. Item 6 is petitions. We have no petitions that we are aware of, unless somebody's about to bounce up. No. Item 7 is questions from members of the Council. And we have had, where are we? We have got replies to those. So we had a question from Councillor Connett, and that has had a written reply from Councillor Thomas. I don't know if Councillor Connett is with us. I can't see, or if he wishes to ask a supplementary, he's given an apology. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. In which case, that's the first question. The second question was from Councillor Rogers, and it was in relation to Lloyd Bank's decision to remove cheque deposit facilities at post offices. Again, Councillor Rogers has had a written reply from Councillor Cottle-Hunkin. Councillor Rogers is here. Councillor Rogers, do you wish to ask a supplementary or comment further? Please do.
Good morning, Chair, and thank you. Yes, I do have a supplementary. My supplementary is Devon County Council took the time to respond to the Post Office Green Paper. Post offices at the heart of community support the most vulnerable in Devon. Would the leader, group leaders and all members support a collaborative letter to the Prime Minister to state the importance of post offices to support our farmers, our most vulnerable, our businesses and organisations in Devon?
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Rogers. If I come to Councillor Cottle-Hunkin, please.
Yes, I just want to thank Councillor Rogers for working so proactively with the council and across all groups as well. I think it's really great to see that cross-party working. So thank you for that, and I'm very happy to meet with colleagues to make sure that we do that, because they are extremely important to our very rural county that we live in. So thank you, keep up the good work.
And I think what Councillor Rogers was asking for was a letter, wasn't it? Or let me take advice from the Chief Executive, please.
Yeah, there is a meeting booked in with the group leaders next week, so we can take that to that meeting and ask the group leaders to consider it in terms of the Cabinet's leaders' response this morning. So we'll take that into that meeting and then we'll provide you feedback after that.
I'll send some information for that meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rogers, for that. I don't believe we have any other questions from members of the council. So we go on to item 7, which is questions from members of the public. We had a question from a Mr. Peter Cleesby, who is in attendance. He has had a reply from Councillor Clist. Mr. Cleesby, would you like to speak further on this?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful for Councillor Clist's reply. I think that there's one profound thing which we disagree, and that's the first sentence, where I've said the rule is unlawful, and Councillor Clist says it isn't. So we can play ping pong like this for an awfully long time. I think the point I would like to make is that although the monitoring officer has, indeed, as Councillor Clist's reply said, explained to me the underlying thinking, the policy behind the changes, she has not at any stage refuted my arguments that it's unlawful. She's had the paper since March last year, and I mean, this is not the place to go into a great detailed, great detailed legal arguments. But I mean, basically, there's a bit of law which says, if a meeting is open to the public, the council cannot exclude them. None of the case law that's been developed in the High Court contradicts that. So my question is, sir, could I have a reply, please, from the monitoring officer or someone to my legal arguments about why this is unlawful?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cleesby. I'll pass over to Maria, who is Director of Legal and effectively Monitoring Officer as well.
Thank you, Chair. So we'll get a written reply out. I would dispute that I haven't already replied. I'll have a number of times, but we will send a written reply out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cleesby, for that. Very good. Okay, so more questions from members of the public. So we have Mr. Giles Fawcett around the Boniface Trail. What I propose to do with that issue is to take the questions and then the item at the same time, if that's okay. So I'll bring the Boniface Trail up the agenda. So if you're kind enough, that is Mr. Fawcett, Ms. Conningham, and Mr. Conningham, to hold your counsel until then, that would be marvellous. We have another question from Mr. Philip Vogel, but he's not in attendance, so that has also had a reply from Councillor Clist. We now go on to agenda item, let's go straight then on to agenda item 11, which is the Boniface Trail. And if I can begin that, please, by asking those members of the public, choosing whichever order they wish to go in, to come up and speak to us, please.
Hi, guys. So the secret to a happy, healthy population is to prioritise the movement of people, not cars. I got here in 38 minutes from Crediton, and that's quicker than any car or bus. Dramatic replacement of local car trips with bikes is fundamental to meeting emission reduction targets. So my question, given the future growth in cycling and walking between Crediton and Newton St Sires, will the Boniface Trail be built to 3 meters width whenever this is possible? LTN 120 makes clear that for this multi-use 2-way route, the width should be 3 meters. And yet DCC Highways report for the Boniface Trail mentions 2.5 meters. And how will the Boniface Trail be separated from the A377, in other words, from cars and lorries? LTN 120 states that separate cycle routes from roads using various methods, prioritizing physical barriers like curbs, grass, or other features such as armadillos, low-level humps, or bollards for higher protections, especially on busier roads, and designing priority crossing at junctions to keep cyclists safe from turning vehicles. We want people to cycle and to feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please, who'd like to, if any, who'd like to address that, or if not, we'll just note that you're in attendance. No, in which case, I'd be pleased to, I think we have ward members here as well. Would any of those, yes, Jim, would you like to come forward, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Boniface Trail is something which Councillor Keeble and myself have been working really hard to achieve. In a world where there's plenty of money, which is not the world which we live in, this would just go ahead very quickly. So what we have to do is all work together, pull together and help each other to get the best form of trail that we can. It might not be perfect in every manner, but if we can get the Boniface Trail started, we will then have an awful lot of, like my fellow councillor Fawcett says, happy people who are very well prepared to use the cycle route. We have done what we can with the different communities to bring them together, and if they can help us shoulder some of the work that has to be done, I think that there is a chance that we can get ahead and have the Boniface Trail started before the unitary authority begins. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Keeble, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a glorious day to welcome a report on the Boniface Trail. Many people have worked hard for this for a great many years. For members of the Boniface Trail group, this has been well over 30 years. I pay tribute to their tenacity. Locally, Councillor Kearney and I, in our respective ward members, have consulted and engaged widely with the community, groups, parishes and town councils. Our thanks to officers who have supported some of those meetings. This report is enthusiastically welcomed. There is a lot of work to be done. Given that if there is approval to the recommendations, will the trail be phased? Phasing will allow early benefits. Can early phasing happen soon? And if so, when?
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. I should just say, noting the attendance of Councillor Ledbetter and 5 Cook, please do on any item, if you wish to speak on it, indicate. I won't just keep coming to you. So yes, Councillor Ledbetter, please. Thank you. I don't think your mic, is it on, Andrew?
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a lot of affection for Crediton, and the A377 is not a road I want to cycle along. So I think this is a really good development for the council to be bringing forward this trail. Really exciting. I know a lot of work's been going on. We heard about 30 years. It's really good that we've come to a conclusion where we can move forward and provide this link. So really good story.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ledbetter. I think I'll come next to the portfolio holder, Councillor Hodgson, please. There are a few questions there and any other comments you wish to add. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, the questions, there were 3 questions on this Boniface Trail for this morning from members of the public. And I thank the members of the public for submitting questions and the enthusiasm and obviously the ongoing, long-standing commitment and campaigning that's been going on for this. There have been some answers to the questions, which I hope you've seen. we haven't actually given the opportunity for a supplementary. I don't know, do we do that at Cabinet? We do, I thought we did, yes. So, I mean, if anybody would like to offer a supplementary question at this stage, I'd be happy to hear that. Yeah, if that's okay.
Okay, I thought what we heard was a supplementary for.
No,
I
no,
think
no.
Mr.
What we
Cleasley,
had
but
is three
there's
questions
more.
in here
Yeah,
from members of the public, and
yes,
each has had the usual short reply.
yeah.
But I just wanted to offer the opportunity for any.
I'm happy to. I did offer the two people to come forward at the time, but very happy to
Yeah,
take them now if they
absolutely.
still
No,
wish to come
yeah.
forward with supplementaries. Yeah, please do. And if you could introduce yourself by name as well, please. Thank you.
Your reply. And my supplementary is about disabled users, because I noticed that one of the stakeholders is not the you don't have as a stakeholder the Crediton and District Access Group. So as well as will there be ramps for from the path for disabled users to gates, and making gates easy to use. I also want to know what priority the Cabinet is giving to the mental health of disabled users. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further supplementaries? Please do, and please introduce yourself, sir, if you will. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Gerald Cunningham. I'm also from Crediton and Sustainable Crediton. It's really building on what Councillor Keeble said. We are very glad about this report. It's a wonderful report. It's very much in line with what people in Crediton want. I'm just concerned about the timing, and I'm glad to see that money will be sought from the Active Travel Fund and other funds like that. But the answer said detailed design will take time. It's unlikely the first phase can be completed within the next 2 to 3 years. I hope that is wrong. I would very much hope that this really some priority will be given. So my question is, what priority will be given to this, to the design work that needs to be done? Because the first bit from Crediton and South is eminently doable, and it would really be good if they could get on with that within 3 years, rather than having to wait till after 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Conningham. I think now to come to the portfolio holder, Councillor Jackie Hodgson, please.
Yeah, thank you. I will refer to the officers in a second for some specific responses on timing and things, but my understanding, working with other active travel routes, is that in terms of how these things come forward, it's basically chicken and egg a little bit, but this at the moment is like the chicken. So we need to get the chicken, you know, we need to get an endorsement of the route itself to have something to work with. Most of the trails that we've been looking at right across Devon are made up of sections. Some sections are easier to deliver than others. Some sections are almost kind of there. And, you know, where those places exist that they are there, there's a big encouragement to people to use them. So congratulations on, I assume you didn't actually say you cycled here, but I assume you did cycle here this morning. But I do think that it's quite difficult to get your head around to some extent how these are delivered, because with the lack of funding that we would obviously all like to see, and, you know, for me, it should be a wartime effort almost to get active travel routes in. You know, we identified a really clear, not just need, but enthusiasm for them during COVID. It's one positive legacy from COVID as far as I'm concerned. And I think, you know, we have to understand that if we can get at least something that we can get over the line for an endorsement, and that's what's happening today, then we've got something to work with to look at funding for, you know, all of it. But maybe there'll be sections that we can actually deliver that are cheaper, that might come under a town or a parish council, or might have some money that they can put in to doing some sections. So the way that they're looked at in sections, albeit, you know, obviously a complete route in essence, which is obviously what we need to start with, then we show that we're actually aiming towards something. And you know, I welcome the fact there's enthusiasm. In terms of the access that's been mentioned just a minute ago, I was actually at Inclusive Totnes last night. There's a similar group to what you're describing about access, and we look at all sorts of things around sort of the hidden disabilities. So people who are profoundly deaf, people with dementia, people who are, you know, struggling to get out. So they're really important people for these routes, because I mean that's what we want people to do, is to get out and enjoy the open air and getting outside, and that sense of freedom. So that's a very important part as far as I'm concerned, and I think it's something that we're looking at more anyway. New government legislation that's come, you know, that's coming, or announcements, should I say, will go on to legislation that's been announced in the last few days, is actually looking very proactively at what's happening for pedestrians, and I think that's very positive. You know, it's looking at how we prioritise pedestrians over cars, and I think again this is what all this is about. But in terms of the overall picture, and this is maybe I'll just go straight, if I may, Councillor Arnott, into just really giving a little bit of an introduction to this for the Cabinet to think about in terms of the recommendation. This has been going on for a long time. I mean, I've had a lot of approaches from different groups across the county who are trying to deliver their trails, and at the moment we've got a situation where you might call it a bit of a difficult decision's been made about where we actually go on the A377, where we're going to have to go off route to be able to deliver this particular route at the moment. I have had conversations with, and the officers know this, with the officers saying, well, let's not take it off the table, that maybe we could deliver that more difficult section eventually. And this is a section that's going to require a fair amount of compulsory purchase order. I mean, this is already going to involve some compulsory purchase order, but there would be far more substantial compulsory purchase order, and buildings that really are in a bad position to actually deliver that section that is going completely onto the quiet lanes. So there's a lot of detail in the report here. I just refer to my fellow Cabinet members here. There's a lot of detail here. It's been well documented how this is fits between Exeter and Crediton. It's very clearly a very highly desired route, so I ask you to support the recommendation. And what we're asking today is to endorse the preferred route, which is that alignment for the Boniface Trail as it's described, and also to approve the commencement of the acquisition of land through negotiation with landowners affected by the scheme and/or compulsory purchase orders as needed and as subject to funding being identified. Meg, Jamie, do you want to say anything about this?
Yes, thank you, Jackie. So just if we have Meg Booth there, who is our Director of Climate Change, Environment and Travel. If there's anything you'd like to add, Meg, please.
I'm going to hand over to Jamie, who knows more of the detail on the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and morning, everybody. I think absolutely, back what Jackie, Councillor Hodgson was saying around the benefits of active travel around mental health. It can reduce stress, anxiety and depression. So that's why it's a key part of our local transport plan and investment in active travel schemes, and the links with public health outcomes. So that policy backing is there. And certainly as we develop the scheme further and engage with people, certainly engaging with groups like the Access group that was mentioned by the speaker, we'd certainly want to engage with people to get input on the details of the scheme when we get to that level. I think one of the key things that's landed literally at Christmas, nice Christmas present from government, was details of funding and how future funding is going to work for local authorities. So what they're proposing is to consolidate all the grants and all the funding that we've previously had. So previously we had active travel grants, we had bus service grants, we've got highway maintenance grants and our core local transport plan funding. And what they're doing is they're combining it all into one single pot, and they're also telling us how much funding we're going to have each year for the next 4 years. So we know what our future funding that we're going to have in this pot is until 2029, 2030. And that's really helpful for schemes like this because it allows, and other schemes, because we have other priority projects like the Teen Estuary. We want to complete the Tarka Trail in North Devon. That's one that's nearly finished, and obviously, but it allows us to actually properly plan these schemes and look at priorities across a longer term. We can actually plan with confidence that funding to take things through. One of the other points that was raised was around how soon can we get things moving. We talked about phasing. I think one of the big positives on this is that there are some really deliverable sections. Certainly the section from Crediton to Newton St Sires, a lot of that is in highway land. It doesn't require land acquisition. So I think the other positive thing that I didn't mention, that I was talking about this consolidated pot, there's also funding for revenue as well. So we also know how much money we've got for doing feasibility work and taking forward some of that design. So again, that's something also that we can look at, and so we'll be able to allocate funding to do those investigations to see what may be deliverable, how we phase things, and look at the whole transport programme as well. But it's not a definitive answer, but the government announcement landed in at Christmas. I've had 2 weeks to look at it, but I think hopefully that gives you some encouragement that actually that funding situation is a lot more positive in terms of being able to look at these big schemes, plan them properly, and have that slightly longer term view of, you know, what are we going to deliver when, and that work is going to happen in the next couple of months.
Lovely. Thank you, Mr. Hullen, very much. So, Councillor Hodgson, you have already very kindly read out the recommendations. Would you like to move them?
Yeah, I move the recommendation.
Okay, and can I just look for a seconder before we then move on to debate? As Councillor Clist, back to you then, please, Councillor Hodgson, and then go into debate in Cabinet if anybody wants to speak.
Okay, I just wanted to give assurance we will actually involve the access group in the consultation going forward, just to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a proposer and a seconder. Cabinet, would you, any of you, like to add anything to that before we move to a vote? No, in which case, may I ask all those in favour, please raise your hands. Very good. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. I would very much like to hear from Mr. Fawcett if you get home in less than 38 minutes. I think, I don't. Yeah, well, I was wondering that. Okay, thank you very much, members of the public. I don't know if you want to, please stay on if you wish. We're about to go into a heavy duty future of council finances section for about the next. So shall I give you a moment to thank you very much for attending. Right, thank you very much, members and officers. We now move back to the agenda in the order as it was before. We go to agenda item 9, which is target budget and service targets for 2026-2027. That's on pages 1 to 14 of your agenda. And this item is to be introduced by the Cabinet Member for Finance, Councillor James Buczowski. James, please.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. It's unusual for a room to clear before I speak. So I'm told. Deputy Leader, this report sets out the proposed budget targets for 2026-27, and I want to be very clear from the outset, this is not a comfortable report, but an honest one. On the surface, the government would have us believe that local government is being treated generously. They point to the increase in so-called core spending power and claim that this is a fair multi-year settlement. But when you strip away the spin and look at the detail, what the report actually shows is a continuation of a long-standing pattern. Central government stepping back and local residents being expected to step in. The reality is stark. Once council tax is excluded, Devon's core funding is effectively flat across the settlement period. And in real terms, it is going backwards. Inflation remains above 3%. The national living wage is rising, as it should. Demand for services continue to grow, yet government's grant support does not keep pace. This is not a sustainable funding model. It is cost shunting by another name. This settlement also exposes a deeper problem with the so-called fairer funding review. Despite all the talk of reform, rurality and remoteness are still not properly recognised. Devon delivers services over long distances with dispersed communities and higher transport and workforce costs, yet those realities are still underweighted in the funding formulas. Meanwhile, assumptions are baked into the settlement rely on councils putting council tax up to the limit and collecting every penny. That might look neat on a spreadsheet in Whitehall, but it ignores the pressures this places on households who are already struggling. Against that backdrop, what this report does is set out how we will respond responsibly. We're proposing service budget targets that prioritise adult social care and children's services, because that's where the pressures are most acute and where failure is not an option. We're doing that while identifying £40 million worth of savings, alternative funding and income, and without planning to prop up day-to-day spending through reserves. That reflects a clear principle, living within our means, even when the national settlement makes that harder than it should be. So this report is not just about numbers, it's about choices. It's about being honest with residents about what is being funded by government and what is not. And it is about making clear that if services are under strain, that is not because councils are reckless, but because the system remains fundamentally stacked against places like Devon. Turning to the budgets themselves, I think it is important to be equally clear about what these figures actually represent. The proposed service targets total just over £839 million. That is a net increase of 4.1% on last year. But colleagues should not misread that as new headroom. Almost 30 million of that increase is simply to stand still. It covers inflation and the national living wage, both of which are unavoidable and both of which reflect costs being driven nationally rather than locally. Beyond that, we are seeing a further £42 million of growth pressures and demand-led costs. These are not discretionary choices. They reflect the rising need in adult social care, increasing complexity in children's services, and sustained pressure across transport, highways, and environmental services. In other words, these are real-world consequences of demographic change, national policy decisions, and years of underinvestment. Adult social care remains our single largest area of spend. The proposed increase of 9.9 million is lower than in recent years, not because demand has eased, but because we are now relying on transformation investment already agreed to deliver better outcomes and reduce long-term costs. This is a risk-managed decision, but it is also one that depends on stability and delivery, not further funding shocks. Children and young people's futures see the largest proportional increase, just over 7.5%. That reflects our clear political priorities. It recognises the scale of pressures in the system and the cost of delay and failure. It also reflects our determination to invest earlier rather than endlessly play for crisis later. Elsewhere, colleagues will see tighter settlements. Some services are being asked to do more with less, and that is not because they are less important, but because the financial envelope we are operating within is constrained. Across the organisation, we have identified £40 million worth of savings, alternative funding and income. That is a significant ask, and it underlines the discipline being applied across the council. What I want to stress is this: these service targets are not about salami slicing for its own sake, and they are not about deferring problems to the future. They're about setting realistic, deliverable budgets that reflect the world as it is, not the one central government pretends exists. Taken together, the service budget shows a council making hard choices, protecting the most vulnerable, and refusing to gamble with reserves to mask a broken funding system. That may not be comfortable, but it is responsible. Over the coming weeks, the full service budgets will be presented to the 3 scrutiny committees for comment, along with consultation events with town and parish councils, businesses, unions, and there will be an online consultation for residents, which will be launching soon. All of this feedback will come back to Cabinet, allowing us to make formal recommendations to full council, who will ultimately set the council's budget. So, Deputy Leader, I'll end where we should always end these discussions, with responsibility. Local government does not have the luxury of gesture or gimmicks. When the money is gone, the consequences are real, and they're felt by the most vulnerable first. That is why this administration is taking a deliberately disciplined approach. We're proposing budgets we can fund. We are not using reserves to paper over structural problems, and we're not pushing risk into the future and hoping someone else deals with it. This is the kind of financial stewardship our administration promised: cautious, evidence-led, and focused on the long term. In an environment of uncertain government funding and rising demand, that discipline is not a weakness. It is the only way to protect services and maintain public trust. This report reflects a council that understands that truth and is prepared to lead accordingly. Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buczowski. I would ask, is there anything that our Director of Finance and Public Value, Angie, would wish to add, or Catherine in support? Angie?
Nothing to add, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Lovely, thank you. In which case, James, can I ask, would you like to move those recommendations that we've got?
Yes, Chair. Do you want me to read them out, or?
Yes, please.
Deputy Leader, I move that the Cabinet be asked to A, approve the revenue budgets as set out in Table 1 to be incorporated in the draft budget for 2026-27. B, agree the capital programme is determined by Cabinet on the 11th of February 2026. And C, note the information relating to the local government finance settlement for 2026-27.
Thank you. Would anybody care to second that? I'll go for Councillor Bickley. Thank you very much indeed. Councillors Fife, Cook and Ledbetter, very happy to hear any contributions from either of you. No, thank you very much. In which case, Cabinet, is there anything more any of you would like to say about that? Yes, Councillor Thomas, please.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I salute the Cabinet member and indeed the director and the wider SLT for managing once again to produce rabbits out of hats. I think it's really important though that we acknowledge the fact that, I mean, from my own department's point of view, I could give you some good news and some bad news. And I mean, obviously we're always grateful for more money. The good news is that I can see on our papers that there is enough money to put our service right for 5 years. The bad news is I need all of the money, every single penny of it, from every department to do that. Just to put that in context, that 839 million, if I could have all of it, please, with the director, you can have roads that you want in the county. And I can't think of a better or starker way of putting the message across, Deputy Leader, that we are always grateful for more money, but it would be disingenuous to the point of ludicrosity to suggest that we have enough, because we don't.
Excellent. This reminds me of the good old days. Remember that chap who used to stand up and use extraordinarily long words? Was that ludicrosity? You just ludicrosity. I thought it was lubicrosity, which made me wonder. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Cottle-Hunkin, please.
I just wanted to add that we really need to be we already are lobbying and pushing, but that the fact that rurality isn't correctly recognised by central government, and we're continuously raising this with Devon's MPs and lobbying Westminster, but the crux of it is that it's not understood and not recognised properly by those in Westminster, and that is crucial to what we need to make sure that we're properly funded. So we are doing it already, but we need to keep doing it, and we've got working groups with other voluntary organisations as well, putting the arguments across from various parts of Devon, but we need to continue that fight.
Thank you, Councillor Cottle-Hunkin. Councillor Jeffries, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I'm really pleased with this budget, that it's that we show our commitment to children and young people in Devon through this as well. It's a solid budget, and just to follow on from Cheryl's point on fairer funding, Denise and I will be visiting Westminster next week to look at the F40 campaign and demand fairer funding for Devon in that part as well. So we're doing what we can in Devon, which I think is a very pragmatic approach, but also going outside of Devon to ask for fairness for our rural area. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councillor Keeling, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader. It can't go without notice that adult social care is not a hot topic. I know that Councillor Thomas likes to talk about roads, but I'd like to talk about the most vulnerable people in our communities that are shortchanged by government. And like Councillor Thomas, I would like all the money, please, and deliver, for every vulnerable person that we have within Devon County district as such, right down to, we should talk more about adult social care. I know myself and the Director for Adult Social Care do, but this council's biggest spend is that because of rurality, and the government misses that, absolutely misses that. And I thank councillors for going off to Westminster and shouting about that. It's very important for our community, our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keeling. Anybody else? In which case we had a proposer and a seconder in Councillor Wachowski and Councillor Bickley. Let's go to the vote now, please, Cabinet. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. For agenda item 10, we remain with Councillor Wachowski to look at the month 8 budget monitoring, which is on pages 15 to 26 of your agenda. James, please.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. So this is the month 8 budget monitoring report, and I want to introduce it in a way that is honest about the scale of the challenge, but also clear about the progress that has been made. The headline figure is a forecast overspend of £5.4 million. That is still a serious position, and no one around this table should be relaxed about it. But what matters just as much as where we are is how far we've come and the direction of travel. Since month 6, the forecast position is improved by £2.4 million, and that improvement has been delivered over the first 6 months of this new administration. This is not theoretical progress, it is tangible, measurable, and grounded in real challenges to how this council is managing its finances. There are some clear highlights in this report that are worth drawing out. Integrated adult social care has improved its position by 1.3 million and children's services by 1.2 million. Those improvements have been achieved in services that are under the greatest strain nationally, where demand continues to rise and costs remain stubbornly high. They reflect tighter financial controls, better scrutiny of placements and commissioning decisions, and early signs that we are reducing resilience on agency staff is starting to have an impact. Recruitment of newly qualified social workers, particularly in children's services, is beginning to strengthen the workforce and reduce cost pressures. And that is exactly the sort of long-term, sensible approach that this council should be taking. There are positives elsewhere in the organisation. Planned savings across the authorities broadly on track, with 21.2 million of 21.7 million forecast to be delivered, despite the loss of some originally planned savings and the need to identify alternatives. Climate change, environment, and transport is forecasting an underspend, and highways income has remained resilient even in the face of difficult weather. Corporate debt is being actively pursued, capital expenditure being managed with a clear understanding of slippage and funding sources, and reserves are being rebuilt in a deliberate and controlled way to protect the council's short-term resilience. But we should be clear about the challenges this report lays bare. Social care remains a stress system, locally and nationally, and while the in-year position is improved, the underlying pressures have not gone away. Corporate services are still forecasting a significant overspend, driven by delayed transformation benefits and changes in expected income streams, and those issues will need continued close attention. What this report does show, however, is a change in approach. There is a greater grip, greater transparency, and a willingness to confront problems early rather than allowing them to drift. Weekly senior oversight of SEND expenditure, tighter controls on commissioning decisions, and a renewed focus on value for money are all signs of a council returning to the fundamentals of good financial stewardship. These are not quick fixes, and they are not headline grabbing, but they are kind of traditional discipline measures that local government has always relied on in difficult times. So, Deputy Leader, I would characterise this report as cautiously encouraging. It does not pretend the position is comfortable, and it does not underplay the risks ahead. But it does demonstrate that 6 months into this administration, tangible results are being seen. The challenge now is to maintain that discipline, keep questioning our assumptions, and ensure that short-term improvements are translated into lasting financial resilience for the council and the communities we serve.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buczowski. Members, we also have in attendance still Angie Sinclair and as a supporting officer, Matt Thorpe. If there are any questions you'd like to address to them, I'm not sure there are any comments they wish at this moment to volunteer at this stage. No, very good. In which case, I'll move the recommendations from the chair that we note the month 8 budget monitoring forecast position. That's A, and B, that we note budget movements to date as set out in Appendix 1 and the forecast reserves position. Cabinet, would anybody like to make any further comments or debate on anything that James has brought before us? No, in which case, if everybody is happy with that, so apparently I need a second.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. In East Devon, when you move from the chair, you just get on with it. But they are quite right, quite right, quite right. Thank you, quite right. Thank you for reminding me, Maria. In which case, let's go to the vote on that. All those in favour, please. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. So we have done item 11, the Boniface Trail, already. We now go to item 12, the open procurement framework for the delivery of adult skills, on pages 95 to 116 of your agenda. Introducing this is the Cabinet Member for Assets and Resources, Councillor Simon Clist. Simon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Leader. Rather alarmingly, 2 more people are leaving.
Yes, no, you and James are having a real mare here, aren't you? Shall we just let them slip away to do essential other work in the building? Yeah, it's not a morale raiser, that is it, really?
Obviously, fully conversant with this report. So.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Leader. Yes, I'm really pleased to be able to deliver this report to you today, and I'd like to thank officers for the collaborative bringing it together in order that it's perfectly sensible piece of internal housekeeping. A few bullet points to take from the report. The paper seeks to establish an open procurement framework to support the commissioning of adult skills provision across Devon, Plymouth and Torquay. Responsibility for the Adult Skills Fund free courses for jobs and skills bootcamp sites with the Devon and Torquay Combined County Authority, with the council acting as an accountable body for the funding and commissioning arrangements. Collectively, these programmes represent up to £24 million of national investment per year in adult skills and workforce development, subject to annual funding confirmations. To date, individual programmes have procured separately as funding has been confirmed, requiring new procurement exercises each time. The proposed framework will give a single 5-year mechanism to commission adult skills provision, replacing repeated standalone procurement with consistent approach designed to operate at scale and over time. The framework will remain open, allowing providers to be onboarded as required and enabling commissioning to respond to changing labour markets conditions, emerging skills gaps and funding requirements. Commissioning will be informed by local labour market evidence and employer demand, including the local skills improvement plan and the combined county authority skills plan. The approach support place-based commissioning across the full geography, including rural and coastal areas, and enable the use of specialist and community-based providers where appropriate.
Could I ask you just take a moment there, Councillor Cliss? Do you want to pour yourself a glass of water? I don't know if that might be, or somebody else, it might be helpful. Thank you. Yes, it can, and then we can all watch you drink it live online. See if you can talk at the same time. No, it's a tricky time of year for throats and everything.
My wife is pointing out that one of my frailties is not being able to do two things at once. Multitasking, I think it's called, but we call it jobs in passing. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Leader. One of the winter lurgies is still affecting me somewhat. Something would think that was very beneficial. Where was I? Yes, of course. The framework provides a clear governance and compliance structure under the Procurement Act of 2023 with consistent quality assurance and performance management. Approval today enables the accountable body to put the necessary arrangements in place to support commissioning from 2026 onwards and more effectively manage delivery effectively. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Leader.
Lovely, thank you, Simon. I wonder if I could just throw perhaps to Kerry, who I haven't mentioned this before, because this is obviously one of those things that's starting to involve the Combined County Authority, isn't it, from later this year. And if you could just give us a sort of thumbnail sketch of where this now leads into and how it might work. Thank you.
There we go. There we go. It's like me, needs coffee. Right. So yes, the skills activity that Councillor Cliss has referred to, some of that is the responsibility of the Combined County Authority. Some of it isn't. We are the accountable body for the Combined County Authority, which is why it's appropriate we run a procurement process that would encapture all activity. So the Adult Skills Fund is a devolved fund. It's about 15 million per annum, looking at the future courses for jobs as well. That is definitely a Combined County Authority responsibility. And we're going through the readiness test to have that funding devolved as we speak was the Department for Education. It's now moved to the Department for Work and Pensions.
The train for tomorrow, the skills bootcamp money remains with the county council. The Department for Education hasn't put that through the devolution framework. That could change over time. And we have provided headroom and scope within the procurement for additional skills funding, which may or may not come through the combined county authority. It might be competitive funds that we also decide to procure, bid for and then procure on behalf of ourselves and indeed partners. The geography is an interesting question. The Adult Skills Fund works for Devon and Torbay, not Plymouth, but the Skills Bootcamp funding does cover Plymouth. So in terms of governance, we have opted to use the Combined County Authorities governance model for oversight, and have asked Plymouth to be part of that conversation where appropriate, because the funding applies to them. Does that cover what you were asking?
Brilliant, Kerry, thank you. Better than AI, I'd say, definitely. But really, I thought it was really important that we understand that, because it's yet another moving cog that we're dealing with. Michael or Andrew, very happy to take any comments on that. Andrew, please.
Very, very quickly to welcome this. It's got to be a very good idea. Yeah, looking forward to seeing how it performs.
Thank you very much. Cabinet. Anybody wish to make any? Yes, Councillor Hodgson, please.
Thank you. I think this is a really important piece of work that's been we've been discussing it probably for the last couple of years as it's come forward, and I think it's good to see where it's got to today. One thing I was going to ask was, what kind of numbers do we expect to, on a year-by-year basis to actually bring through this process? I just wondered if we know. I mean, I'm not reading it in there, so I just wondered if we know. But the other thing I was going to say was, I had the privilege yesterday of being at the last board meeting of Stover Country Park, which we own and have done all these developments at. And the point was made there by actually our Deputy Director of Services, Rob Richards. Why is it just in the highways department that we've been talking about it? What they offer there is all sorts of training opportunities. And the staff there have been doing an amazing job with all their conservation work, but they've used the opportunity to bring in all sorts of different sectors and members of the public who are really keen. And I think maybe that's something we could look at, some of the assets that we've got, to use maybe our own, opportunity to actually do a bit of procurement, using our own facilities and assets and our own very, very talented staff, or that particular team at the moment. But I'm sure there's other examples across the council where we could actually avail of maybe sort of some of the work that, some of the conversations I've had recently about looking at how we do more in-house. This to me would be a really good, easy step forward for some of that, because there's some really interesting jobs within local authority delivery of public services, let alone, maybe more outward facing jobs.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. That's a fascinating point. Perhaps again, if I ask Kerry to come forward on the sort of quantum aspect of the question that you asked there.
I'll get to you the details rather than do it off the top of my head. I think the skills boot camps is circa 2,000 per annum, but I will definitely confirm. Thank you. There's a cost per beneficiary that they require of us, but I'll set that out in a note. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. So any other members of Cabinet wish to say anything about this? Just to save Councillor Clist's throat, I'll move the recommendations, which are A, that a procurement process is undertaken in accordance with the Procurement Act 2023 to establish an open procurement framework for commissioning the delivery of adult skills covering Devon, Plymouth and Torbay for a maximum of 5 years, with an estimated value annually of 24 million. And B, that we give delegated authority to the Director of Performance and Partnerships in consultation with the Director of Finance and Public Value and Cabinet Member for Assets and Resources to finalise the procurement process and award contracts for the specified training provision. Happy to move that from the Chair. Anybody care to second that? Councillor Clist, thank you very much indeed. In which case, let us go to a vote on that, Cabinet, please. All those in favour? Lovely, that is unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Clist. Item 13 is regarding substance misuse services and awarding a contract and arrangements. On your agenda, it's pages 117 to 146. It'll be introduced by our Cabinet Member for Rural Affairs, including broadband, Councillor Cheryl Cottle-Huntkin. Cheryl, please.
Thank you. Since the launch of the current contract in 2018, Devon has seen a 41% increase in the adult treatment population for drug and alcohol services. This rise reflects not only the growing demand, but also the increasing complexity of cases and associated costs, including pharmaceutical treatments. The scale of unmet need remains significant. According to the National Drug Treatment Monitoring System, there are 6,406 people in Devon with an unmet alcohol treatment need and 1,214 individuals with an unmet need for opiate and/or crack treatment. The impact on our communities is stark. Exeter now has the highest rate of drug-related deaths in the southwest, while North Devon and Torridge exceed national averages for drug-related deaths. Alcohol harm, particularly patterns of drinking established during the pandemic, continues to be a major concern. To address these challenges, additional government funding has supported projects such as for rough sleepers and employment support for those in recovery. In 25-26 alone, Devon received 2.19 million in supplementary substance misuse funding, with over 1.16 million allocated directly to enhance treatment capacity and strengthen pathways from criminal justice and primary care settings. The current contract with Way Through, our provider since 2018, is due to expire at the end of March 2027. Under normal circumstances, a procurement exercise for a new service would begin this summer. However, due to local government reorganisation and ongoing NHS changes, I am proposing that we award a new contract for up to 3 years to the current provider. This will provide stability during a period of significant change and allow time for NHS reforms to embed. The proposed contract values, which may be subject to minor amendments once the public health settlement is confirmed, will enable the provider to respond to growing demand, increasing complexity and rising treatment costs. Importantly, the new contract will also allow for the creation of a dedicated enhanced family support offer, embedding drug and alcohol workers within the Family First programme. I am therefore recommending that Cabinet agree to the direct award of a new contract with Way Through, ensuring continuity and stability for this vital service during local government reorganisation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cottle-Huntkin. And I think there's an additional recommendation, isn't there, to delegate to the Director of Public Health and Communities in consultation with yourself to enter into the 3-year contract with the incumbent provider. Well, that's effectively what you just said. So that was a waste of time me reading that out, wasn't it? Can I ask Steve Brown, this is a question on behalf of the leader, actually, because the leader would like to understand Way Through, do they have a range of other clients other than us? And how large is it as an organisation and as a charity and so forth?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. I also have my left-hand person here, Richard, who's my expert on it, but just in terms of Way Through, and just going back in the past, Way Through are a national charity, huge organisation, over 3,000 employees, £165 million kind of contract. That's in stark contrast to certainly when I started in this 15, 20 years ago, when you had lots of smaller local charities, which didn't bring the resilience, it didn't bring the sustainability. So through a number of mergers over recent years, Way Through has stood up as one of the key national providers around drug and alcohol and also mental health as well. And we know those kind of toxic trio are often at the heart of some of the challenges people face. So, I mean, Richard, I don't need to add anything, but they are a massive, national organisation delivering right across the country.
Yes,
Thanks,
Richard
Steve.
Merrifield, if you'd like to add, please do.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is that Way Through recently were Humankind merged with Richmond Fellowship, and as Steve says, they've grown their portfolio to go beyond drug and alcohol into mental health expertise, as well as housing provision as well for people that are vulnerable in various communities. And in the southwest, they hold the contract with Dorset, as well as ourselves in Devon currently.
Thank you. I suppose always that they're a registered charity, obviously that's or a CIO or whatever it is. Always the question with this is who guards the guardians to a certain extent. In other words, to whom do they answer and report other than, I suppose, us, the clients?
Correct, yes. We have quarterly performance review meetings with them. I meet with their service manager and area manager on a monthly basis, and they also are inspected by the CQC. Nationally, Way Through have, with, as Steve says, a range of contracts, and the majority of their CQC inspections are either good or outstanding.
Thank you very much. Andrew's not here. Michael, anything you'd like to come in on that? No, thank you. Cabinet, anybody? Yes, Councillor Hodgson, please.
I just wonder, I mean, I don't know how pertinent this question is, but because I don't know how, in some ways, how you really do measure success. I suppose it's how long away from alcohol and drugs. But what kind of success rate do they have, this organisation, and how does that, measure against the national average?
Thanks, Councillor, for your question. So, as you say, there's a whole range of different measures that you can assess a provider by, and nationally there is the National Drug Treatment Monitoring System that Councillor Cheryl Cottle-Hunkin presented earlier. Nationally, there's a national drug strategy that was released in 2021, and that highlighted in the early stages they wanted local areas to focus the additional investment on increasing treatment numbers, and as Councillor Cottle-Hunkin mentioned, our treatment provider Way Through locally have increased their treatment numbers by over 40%, which is one of the best in the country. However, as a result of that, there's the treatment outcomes and the quality of the offer. Nationally, there's been a decline as volumes of people have gone up to serve that demand. Whilst we have seen a decline in our quality of the treatment progress of individuals in treatment in Devon, it remains above the national averages for each of the different treatment pathways that we have. And subsequent years, the last year or so, and as a result of the last yesterday's national webinar, there is an emphasis in the future, next 3 years, to focus on improving the quality of the treatment offer going forward. And there have been steps that the Way Through organisation, in partnership with ourselves, have taken to create a strategic plan of action around improving the quality. Part of which is the decline in quality is compounded by other factors that are outside of both our and the treatment services control, where the drug markets have changed nationally as well as internationally, and so there are new addictions to certain substances that are perhaps more novice in the quality of the treatment offer, and it's newer than perhaps opiate users, which has been long-standing, and by that you may have seen in the media the increasing prevalence use of ketamine and other non-opiate substances, particularly cocaine, which are on the rise.
Thank you, Richard, very much for that. Yes, Jackie, back to you.
Just wonder in terms of, because those recent reports about ketamine increased use was talking about youngsters as young as 12, and there was a piece on the BBC News, I think it was about a week ago, where they were talking about, that needs to be a real sort of emphasis on getting into schools and frightening basically the kids into realizing what the outcomes could be by the time they're 18. And most youngsters won't want to have seriously damaged bladders, for example, even if they might think about some of the other outcomes. Is this organisation reaching into that kind of element?
We have a separate contract for under 18s in Devon that sits with Y-Smart, part of our Children's Services Directorate, and so they would predominantly be catering for that client group. It's generally the under 25s that we're seeing the increased prevalence of ketamine use, so both Y-Smart and Way Through are supporting people and liaising strongly with our local hospitals to ensure that urology and pain management services are jointly supporting these people that are suffering with bladder issues as a result of the ketamine harm.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Dan Thomas, please.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Mr. Merrifield, in that halcyon world where LGR is not happening, and therefore we're re-procuring, would you be saying to Mr. Brown, "Gosh, I do hope these guys tender again for the work"?
I would hope that they would tender again if we were to put it out to a competitive process. Yes, I think the added value of a national charity such as Way Through has meant that they've been able to draw on the expertise of other contracts across the country that they've already had in place, unlike the smaller charities that we may have contracted with in previous times. So there's been efficiencies as well through having a national charity in place. So I wouldn't want to or wish to exclude them from any competitive process that we might enter into in future years.
Thank you. That will do for me.
Thank you. Richard, what just as a, if you can do so, as a sort of finger in the air percentage, how much of this work is located in the area of Exeter, really?
So Way Through have 3 hub sites in Devon. One is based in Newton Abbot that serves the South Devon and West Devon kind of patch. There's one in North Devon based in Barnstaple that covers the northern locality. The Exeter hub site serves also East and Mid Devon support. So it's got a broader, a bit bigger geography. In addition to support that goes into the core contract nationally, going back to that drug strategy in 2021, it was recognised that rough sleepers had a very poor outcome and struggled to access drug treatment services that were traditionally commissioned by local authorities. So there's been protected investment for rough sleeping support into Exeter, of which Way Through are one of a number of half a dozen partners that we currently contract with for that support. So there is an additional amount of money that goes into Exeter specifically for rough sleepers and those at risk of rough sleeping to access and gain support for treatment. In terms of the percentage of how much of their contract value that we give them goes into Exeter specifically, I wouldn't be able to answer today, I'm afraid.
That's fair enough, thank you. The reason I was asking was that do you find therefore that officers from here like yourself are working with officers from Exeter on this as well? There's an overlap presumably.
Yeah, because of the additional work we've got going in, it's called the STAR project, which is the rough sleeper team, as well as the core contract value within Exeter. I'm well placed to speak to and liaise with the practitioners on a regular basis. I aim to get to their multidisciplinary team meetings 3 or 4 times a year in all 3 of the hubs, so that I'm well connected to changes and differences across Devon in terms of the drug market and the challenges that the workforce are facing. Where there have been challenges with regards to workforce in Exeter, particularly Way Through have moved staff from other hubs to help ensure that they've got a robust provision. People aren't waiting for extortionate amounts of time to get their support.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that. There is a, since the subject of LGR has been mentioned, not by me, I should have noted as well. There was a very disappointing meeting in Exeter last night, Cabinet, where they, in effect, resolved that they're going to cancel the elections in May. Okay, that's up to them, matter of taste and judgment, I suppose. But it is becoming exhausting hearing the stab in the back myths from senior members at Exeter City Council that Devon County is doing nothing for Exeter. And although I really don't want to politicise this very important subject, this is exactly the kind of case where we are doing a lot for Exeter, and I hope the people of Exeter are hearing that. My name is Ben Elton. Good night. Right, anybody else in Cabinet wish to make any comments on that? Yes, Michael, Councillor Fife Cook.
Sorry to come back at this awkward time, but
no, Michael, very welcome. Thank you.
I'm coming to this obviously totally naive. I know very little about rough sleeping, drugs, etc., etc. And I don't want us to feel that we can use LGR as an excuse for not doing our job properly. So my concern is not what you're doing now. Is are you happy enough with the system that's running at the moment to look 3 years in advance and say, well, this group of people is still going to be continually monitoring themselves to make sure they're providing the best service they can? Thank you.
Yes, I think through our analysis and assessment of the situation with regards to LGR, I had to fill in through the kind of legal procurement processes documentation to satisfy that we were we have evidence to support that way through are providing a good service for the volume of money that we are supporting them with. And that's been signed off and is referenced in the document. But in addition, in terms of the context of LGR, I think it's fair to say that a up to 3-year additional contract over a short period of time for any other competitor would be unattractive. Therefore, if we were to go through a competitive procurement exercise now, we would possibly struggle to get the attractiveness of the wider market that we might get in 3 years' time when we do know what the future geography and financial settlements are more likely to be.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Councillor Fife-Cook. I'm just going to Steve Brown now, please, our Director of Public Health.
Thank you. Just to come back on a couple of comments from Councillor Fife-Cook and Councillor Thomas. So underpinning, I think your question was, am I happy that we go with this provider? And rest assured, as Richard just explained, in terms of the hurdles to jump over in terms of being able to use the provider selection regime, quality, value, basically being honest, are we confident they're providing a bloody good service, or do I think we can find someone else? Rest assured, Cabinet, if I wasn't confident, I'd be coming here today saying we will need to go out and find another alternative provider. It's in the paper, but we need to have that flexibility, and so the extension of the contract will be with annual break clauses. So if we fast forward 12 months, we might be in a very different position. We might be recommend to Cabinet to go through a different route. That gives us that flexibility, but I think what's crucial is the consistency and sustainability of a high quality drug and alcohol service for an increasing need within Devon is, I think, the right thing to do. Hence me challenging the team around, are we absolutely sure this is the right route? Are we hitting all those targets? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, this is the paper in front of you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, very much for that. I see no other comments coming forward from Cabinet, so I'll return to Councillor Cottle-Hunkin to speak and perhaps propose.
I just wanted to highlight something within the report that I didn't include in the introduction, and that's about a national statistics in relation to substance misuse. So part 3.8a, it says drug and alcohol misuse contributes to the poor health and premature death of individuals and has profound consequences for families and communities. Nationally, it's estimated that parental substance misuse features in the lives of about half of children who are subject to child protection plans, and 60% of children who become subject to care proceedings. I think that's quite alarming and something that we need to be aware of, and that importance of this contract and making sure that we reach those people and treat these people like the importance of it, not just on the people who are going through this, but of the impact on the families and the wider impact that has on our children as well.
Thank you, Cheryl. Are you proposing, by the way?
Yes.
Can I look for a seconder? Councillor Keeling. Thank you very much. Chief Executive, please.
Just following on from that very important point, and it is in the paper, so thank you, Councillor Cottle-Hunkin. I wonder if we could ask the question in terms of reforms for children, and I know that Councillor Hodgkin, asked some very specific questions about young people. If our Deputy Director of Children's Services, Children's Social Care and Director of Public Health could answer the question about some of the developments that between your directorates you've been doing at the front door in terms of links to domestic abuse, which is signposted in the report, some of the developments, but also I wonder if you could speak to any developments in the multi-agency working in this space, because clearly we can only make a difference with contracts like this if we have strong multi-agency partnerships, the right support of our police and NHS colleagues. So I just wondered if you could speak to that matter, since it's been raised, and since we heard earlier from the Cabinet about the Council's strategic approach being very much focused on children and young people.
I'll let you go.
Thanks, Donna. Yeah, as Richard mentioned, within the contract going forwards, there are a number of adult substance misuse workers that will be located alongside children's social work teams so that they can work directly with those families. There's not a referral process that they'll need to go through. We can respond much more quickly to those parents who have got drug and alcohol needs that need to be addressed and that they need to be supported with. And that is part of a family safeguarding approach that we're developing within children's social care within the remit of the Families First reforms. So the idea being that if we can address the needs of parents, they can then better meet the needs of their children, as Councillor Cottle-Hunkin has already referred to. So we are planning alongside the substance misuse workers also to have domestic abuse workers. Well, we already have domestic abuse workers within our social work teams. We've got funding going forwards for that, so we'll be able to continue that development. And we are planning for the future to also locate adult substance misuse workers alongside the domestic abuse workers and the substance misuse workers. So the idea being that we can address the toxic trio for parents, so drug and alcohol misuse, domestic abuse, and adult mental health. So that's all work in progress, and it's something that Steve and myself are working together on to move forwards with.
Thank you. Not much to add to that, just to emphasise, it's complex. The vulnerable individuals we're talking about, the vulnerable families, it's often not just a sole single service area. In the past, I think we've probably been fairly critical as a system that we look at individual service responses. And as the Chief Executive alluded to and Becky's highlighted, we need to do better in working more collaboratively and thinking about the outcomes for those individuals and families. And we do that by getting the right people with the right skill set around the same table. So as highlighted, work to be done, we can work through it. It might be test and learn, but the commitment's there and the funding there, which is crucial.
Is there, Steve, for example, when it's a safeguarding issue, you've got a local authority designated officer thing, is there police and all sorts of stuff? And as you say, this is across many areas of what we do. Who, I suppose, to put it prosaically, who keeps the file on the person who needs the assistance? Who owns it most? Do you see what I mean? Because if there are a number of authorities involved, who's vigilant on that one?
In children's social care, we obviously keep the files on the children, but what we're working on going forwards is how we have a shared space for that recording on our electronic recording systems. There will also be recording for the adults that sit separately, and we're still in that space, aren't we, Richard? But we will certainly be looking to make sure that they are connected and that the information can be shared as appropriate. And as I said, those particular workers, our vision is that they will be located within the social work team, so that will all assist in that information sharing and that response, that robust response to those parents.
And how does that interact with, say, the courts or the police system as well? Because presumably there is some overlap there.
Yeah, I guess similar. We would information share with the police as appropriate. We are moving also within the Families First reforms to multi-agency child protection teams that will be located within our 3 localities in children's social care. So again, that will only strengthen the information sharing across partners, so that where we're, for example, working with parents where domestic abuse is a particular concern, that information is shared at the right time and we can respond robustly with that multidisciplinary, multi-agency team around the family.
So multi-agency protection teams, I understand that. I suppose the question is, I understand this is complex and evolving, but in the end, who's the key stakeholder in that? Who's the one who goes, right, we haven't looked at this file for a month, everybody, what's going on there? Or actually, doesn't it work like that?
Children's social care will always take the lead in terms of child protection issues. So where it's about children, we will take the lead, but we very much work with our key partners, police, health, education. So, in the front door, for example, that decision making for children that are at risk is joint and is shared, but the lead sits with children's social care.
Thank you very much for that. Anybody else, members? Go on then, Councillor Rogers. I probably shouldn't, but go on.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pay respect to the officers who gave up their Christmas Day for the most vulnerable in our county. I really appreciate their service and dedication.
Well said, Councillor Rogers. Thank you. Councillor Jeffries, please.
Chair, I just wonder if it might help to say in the strategic space in that the improvement board that we hold and I chair brings together partners, us, the police, and the NHS and education, bring us all together to look at these problems strategically. So that I think that's the other piece where we can drive that change and hold partners to account. So we're changing things. And strengthening those services for children, but we can't do that alone. And I think the drug and alcohol piece shows that we're joining up all of those things together, but we need partners to step up and give us assurance that the services that we rely on in that journey for that family, that person, that child, are there to support and are all lined up together to get the best outcomes. Thank you.
That's very interesting. Thank you very much, Councillor Jeffries. Councillor Cottle-Hunkin, are you proposing the recommendations?
Yeah, I think I did.
I
Yeah.
think you already have. I mean, forgive me. Did somebody already second it? Councillor Keeling. That was like 20 minutes ago, wasn't it? Okay, Groundhog Day. Forgive me. In which case, Cabinet, let us go to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you very much, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed for that. The next item is item 14, Childcare Sufficiency Assessment, Annual Return. And in the absence of both the leader, Councillor Julian Brazil, and indeed the Director of Children's and Young People Services, Julian Worcester, although we've got the support from Simon Niles, Councillor Denise Bickley has kindly offered to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to introduce the Childcare Sufficiency Assessment for 24-25. This report demonstrates that in the context of the most significant national childcare reforms in a generation, Devon County Council continues to meet its statutory duty and remains ahead of national benchmarks on child sufficiency. However, there is more work to do, and this annual report sets out priority areas strategically and geographically to meet expected rising demand, particularly for under twos, wraparound and rural provision. The priorities set out for 2025-26 reflect our clear commitment to giving children the best possible start in life and ensuring families across Devon can work, train and thrive. I therefore commend the report to Cabinet and ask members to note its findings and support the direction of travel it sets out. In the meantime, since writing that, we have had a meeting and I've got a little bit more information regarding the Sure Start centres which are being commissioned to run as nurseries. So that adds a little bit of weight to some of the missing areas on the report. So we've got centres where we have already identified a provider to run a childcare provision in South Brent, Holsworthy and Marpoy and Exmouth, and centres where we are preparing to send out tender packs, and that's Honiton, Hatherley, Great Torrington, Sidmouth and Tavistock. So that helps with some of those gaps. So just wanted to let you know about that, but happy to commend the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bickley. And are you moving that recommendation?
Oh, yes, I will. Recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody like to second that at this stage, Councillor Jeffries? Thank you. In which case, Councillor Ledbetter, Councillor Fife-Cook, anything you'd like to come in on that? Yes, Councillor Fife-Cook.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, how many foster carers do we really need? Are we short of?
Well, it's not really part of this agenda item, Michael,
Right,
but
okay.
I'm sure happy for somebody to, an officer to get you that information later, if that's okay. Thank you very much.
Appreciated. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you very much. Anybody want to say anything else on that, or shall we move straight to a vote? In which case, Councillor Cottle-Hunkin.
I was just going to add that I visited Winkley Primary School, where they've now got the childcare provision from age 0 plus, and it's really, really needed and really, really welcome in our rural communities. So I really welcome this additional support. More and more parents need to be working and they need that wraparound care, and when you live in a really rural village or hamlet or just in the middle of nowhere, it's impossible to find childcare. So to have this available in our local primary schools, I think Winkley was the first one in Torridge. It's really good to see, and they had a really good opening and lots of the community attended, and yeah, it's really good.
Thank you, Councillor Cottle-Hunkin. It's part of a theme that's emerging today around the difficulties, the specific difficulties of living in an area with a large amount of rurality. It's, you could say it's not easy, but it's not as challenging to set up a nursery provision, a preschool provision, or whatever in a London borough. You know, you could probably fill it with, you know, about half a square mile of people. It's so challenging here, and this is a theme that's going across most of the items today. So, yes, Councillor Bickley, please.
Just going to come back in there about some information I was hearing from the team about how they're working really hard with primary schools to open up more provisions, and specifically pushing them to the younger age group. And also the other point being that if you do live in a rural community but you work in a city, the difficulty being is that a lot of people want to take their children with them to the city and have provision there. So it may be that we're looking more at childminders and helping people to get into that market rather than nurseries in really rural areas, because there just isn't the demand. So it's that whole jigsaw pattern of getting the right things in the right place all the time. And I think this report and the onward looking strategy, it just brings much more clarity to it. So I feel really confident in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Cottle-Hunkin, please.
Just as well, the wraparound childcare that is supporting the funding that to help set those up in our very small rural primary schools is really needed, and I'm personally using that. I'm able to be at this meeting and this afternoon thanks to that wraparound childcare, which is being supported through this, and I know that these really small primary schools really need this support. Otherwise, working parents, they look at the bigger schools because they offer it. So we really need to be putting that support into the smaller schools to make sure that they can remain open, because in this day and age, it is essential. So everything that we can do is really appreciated.
And there's a key piece of data on page 157, echoing Councillor Cottle-Hunkin's point, that for eligible families taking up working parents funding for 0 to 4 provision, the national take-up is 80%. In Devon, it's 91.8. You know, the need is shown and proven. Was there anybody else who I've missed? The Chief Executive, please.
Considering the Cabinet leads have said that they are going to Westminster in terms of that push for school funding, I wonder if we could have clarification, considering we see that our primary school age population is predicted to drop in Devon, which will leave capacity, and listening to school leaders, you know, capacity and school buildings into the future. I wonder if we could clarify in terms of the funding. It's great to have the uptake. The opportunities to expand and develop, for Councillor Cottle-Hunkin has described this morning as that 0 to 5 provision in rural areas. Is there a funding barrier to this in terms of what we receive as an area, or is it that the more we ask for and the more we can deliver? So I just wonder if you know, Simon Niles could give us an indication about that, and whether there is a lens to the schools funding that perhaps the Cabinet leads need to be made aware of. So it's really that question of, you know, can we enhance that sufficiency if we can evidence it in terms of national government funding? I just wondered if we could have that clarification, please.
Yeah, I think the challenges we have within our rural areas is not so much the funding per place, but the physical numbers to make provision sustainable. So I think the challenges we have around funding is making sure that provision is sustainable, and I guess it's that ghost funding element of it, which is a real challenge. I think the mapping shows where we've got quite a lot of challenges. We've got quite significant decreasing numbers of pupils. So I suspect that we've got an issue there around creating sustainable provision for either private providers or even schools to open up and pump prime funding. That is probably a challenge. And then putting a line to that, I think we discussed it a lot today, the rural challenges around transport as well. So I think the core funding going into schools, if you've got sufficient numbers and sustainable, means that we're able to, and that's why we've seen a smaller number of providers providing more, because they can make it financially sustainable. I think our challenge is about very, very small numbers and making sure we have that offer. So we could go and do some more work around it, but I think the ghost funding of early years provision, so we can get early years and childcare provision, is our largest challenge.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Yes, Councillor Jeffries, please.
Just musing on that point of the numbers. I mean, when we talk about per pupil, the funding being working for larger elements, but the crux of being a rural area is you can't get to those numbers. So it is about sustainability, but it's also fundamental as well. And it begs the question, in light of rurality and remoteness not being considered so much in funding formulas that we get. To me, that seems to be the crux of the problem. How can we challenge that if those factors aren't being recognised? And it seems like a very scale is what it plays into that piece, and how can we articulate that better to be able to put our needs forward? Because there'd be no point in saying, well, it's great, we could put up 100 pupil unit here, but that's not going to be appropriate.
I think we can do some additional work and articulate that and provide members with that evidence. I think we're seeing exactly the same challenge for our rural primary schools generally. Quantum of numbers and having a sustainable school without the, if you like, again, ghost funding pupils to support schools being sustainable. So we can certainly do some more work on that. Particularly, we can do some evidence bases around some of our more rural areas. I think, Torridge is a particular area where we're seeing struggling with pupil numbers and birth weights, and that's feeding through into school challenges, but also with our early year challenges. So we can do some case study work around that if that would be helpful.
Just in response, I wonder if the Director of Finance, if we can, it's my understanding that in terms of the early review of the fair funding formula, that remoteness and rurality was built in for a range of services, but when the final, it's not final yet, but when the fair funding review came through in December, the remoteness allocation was retained for adult social care, but it's my understanding that the children's element and other services element was removed. Could you just clarify that for us, please, because it might help Cabinet in terms of some of the lobbying that you tend to do on this next week?
Yes, happy to come in on this one. That is correct, Donna. So at the moment we're at provisional settlement. There is an opportunity to respond to the provisional settlement before final settlement in February, but I don't think it likely. Government are going to change their view on this at the current time.
Councillor Cottle-Hunkin, please.
I don't understand how that makes any sense, because if they recognise it for one sector, why do they not recognise it for the other sectors that affect our council? It just doesn't make any sense.
Answer came there, none, unless no. Councillor Buczowski.
Well, Leader, I would say common sense is clearly lacking from this government, isn't it?
The rhetorical question, I suspect there. Okay, thank you very much. So we've had a good debate on that. We've got a, but I'd like to come back to Councillor Cottle-Hunkin one more time.
Sorry, I was just going to add about the need for long-term support. We were talking about the problems of numbers and take-up in rural areas, but you need that long-term sort of commitment within a setting for parents to realise that it's there and that it's going to stay, because then you will attract the numbers. Whereas if it's just a one-off year, that's children are there for more than 1 year, aren't they? They're there for the whole of the school. You don't want to be moving them because suddenly that support is taken away. So how can we ensure that we get that long-term support which will then boost the numbers, because I'm sure that it would, but we need that commitment to attract parents to place their children there, rather than going for the big schools, which they know will always have that support.
So, so the way that I'm sure you're aware that we've redesigned the inclusion and learning service, and the early years service has now been moved into a locality based model. So we're seeing a lot more locality based work and working with, particularly with providers, with their financial planning, their sustainability planning. In some cases, we do boot camps, we do a lot of training with schools. So the whole premise is we set up something that is sustainable, which then does give those parents that confidence. So that sustainability is kind of built into the factoring in, bringing in our new provision. So we've talked already about the 3 centres in Holsworthy, South Brent and Exmouth. So within that work, we would have done that kind of sustainability planning and financial planning to ensure that the offer, hopefully the 8 to 6 p.m. and childcare offer is full and sustainable, so parents can become confident in it.
Thank you. And another thing to raise is about, I've got experience of somewhere near me, they really want to set up a nursery within a rural area, which is really needed, but there are so many hurdles that they've come up against in terms of planning. I know that's not Devon County, but something to be aware of, and especially as we move to, with local government reorganisation, that need to be more flexible and allow these nurseries and childcare providers to come forward in the rural areas and stop putting up those barriers which make it increasingly difficult for people. That was more of a statement.
And LGR portfolio holder noted, definitely, no, seriously noted, because we do need to think about what we haven't thought about yet as we move forward on LGR. Anything else, Councillor Lunkin? In which case we have a proposer and a seconder. Can we go to the vote, please? All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, officers. Thank you, members. We now go to the interesting item, this one, Councillor Thomas, to help us with the audit task group findings, pages 183 to 196. And it's a review of the decision-making process for the future delivery model for the highways maintenance service, and to a certain extent it establishes wider principles of scrutiny, I suppose it's fair to say. Councillor Thomas, please.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. I mean, the recommendations are there, and I think really recommendation 1 gets to the bottom of what this whole process. Cabinet asked the Audit Committee to look into a decision taken by the previous Council's Cabinet around the term of maintenance contract. And basically, the Audit Committee, at which I appeared before and gave some evidence myself, considered the previous Scrutiny Committee of the previous Council and the previous Cabinet, and that recommendation, as I say, is key. That Cabinet, when considering recommendations from Scrutiny Committees, actively discusses and considers the recommendations in its decision making. And I suppose what I would say, Deputy Leader, is this Cabinet has proved that that is how we operate. And I can think of no better example than the Cabinet meeting we held on LGR, where we spent 85% of the meeting dealing with the 21 points raised at the previous full council by members of that morning. So in fact, that is a classic example of what the Audit Committee is recommending that Cabinet does in future. So effectively, we are already doing that which we should be, which is making whatever decision we wish to make as a Cabinet, because of course that is our right, but clearly being seen to consider, as a courtesy that we should extend because of the work put in, considering in full that which has come from scrutiny in the first place. And that, in a nutshell, was the contention around what hadn't happened in this specific issue that led to the audit hearing in the first place. There are other specific recommendations that you'll see. Number 2 is a substantive one around the department, that we should continue regular information services for councillors. I mean, I know that the director and I will be delighted to continue doing that, because what we found is that the attitude towards the department is manifestly improved through greater understanding of how the service actually works. And I thank members from across all political parties for their attendance at highways masterclasses that we've run so far, because it's been really encouraging to see that we've had members from all political parties attending and being well engaged. So that will continue. And then you will see recommendation 3, a clear protocol for voting in committees. This arises from the fact that in the scrutiny committee in question on the day that we're talking, the committee were invited to have some sort of beauty contest of which idea was best, therefore allowing for the possibility that members had more than one vote, which clearly isn't ideal. So recommendation 4 is probably the one that would most help that, suggesting to democratic services that we look at investing in an electronic system as is used in other council chambers where votes can be recorded, just because that would make life much clearer and easier. If one had a button to press where you had 3 options, you can't then make a mistake. Although I appreciate that there are financial implications to that we may or may not choose to look at. But I think in essence, what audit discovered was that the Cabinet were entirely right to make the decision they made. But as a point of good practice moving forward, we ought to be seen to make absolutely certain that we are considering those scrutiny decisions and working with our scrutiny partners and recognising the fact that scrutiny is an important part of the council's process. Otherwise, happy to take specific questions. Otherwise, at the appropriate time, I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Happy for you to move now, if that's just to get it down. Anybody happy to second that at this stage? Councillor Buczowski. Also, just to note, if I may, for the minutes, Cabinet's thanks to the 5 members of Devon County Council's Audit Committee who did this task group, in particular Councillor Alan Connett, who chaired it. Thank you. Michael or Andrew? Thank you. Cabinet, yes, Councillor Buczowski, please.
Thank you, Leader. It's just to state that recommendation 3 and 4, I think, really should be passed on to the governance working group to really get the detail on that and come back with the suggestions. Obviously, that probably will require some changes to the constitution. So recommendation 1, we can do that at Cabinet. Recommendation 2 is obviously for the highways department. 3 and 4, I think, do need that governance working group support just to get the detail.
Anybody else support that idea? Denise, in which case I'll ask for advice from. I know I can see out of the side of my eye. I'll ask for Karen to come and help us with this.
I think what might be sensible for the Cabinet to do today is to formally move that the Audit Committee be thanked for its report, and that you ask your relevant Cabinet members we've got to provide that formal response back to the Audit Committee. And I think in that more detailed response, so delegate it to your relevant Cabinet members, and then I think we pick up the relevant actions in the most appropriate way, in the way that's just been outlined. It sits in a number of different areas, so I think to try and split it up now is maybe a little messy, but let officers come up with a composite report in liaison with the Cabinet members, get the best response if Cabinet thinks that's the best way forward.
Councillor Buczowski, are you happy with that? Okay, thank you very much. So anybody else like to say anything on this item? In which case we've had it moved by Councillor Thomas, seconded by anybody? Did somebody already second? It was Councillor Buczowski, of course it was. I'm kind of really on it today, I promise you, but this seconding thing is really doing my head in. In which case, let's go straight to the vote. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Just to let you know, I plan to take a break just before we go into part 2 for anybody who's starting to get increasingly alarmed. So we have some standing items at item 16, minutes for noting, nothing requiring endorsement of Cabinet. And that is the Farms Estate Committee, 2nd of December 2025. Its interviewing committee of the 15th of December 2025, 16th of December and 17th of December 2025. Those are noted. Thank you to that committee. Item 17, policy, performance and transformation, SEND. And this is about improving transparency on send improvement and transformation. A standing agenda item will provide an opportunity to provide any pertinent updates. And it says here, Sally Heath will attend and give a verbal update. And here she is. Lovely. Over to you, Sally, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to give a brief verbal update of some of the key headlines and messages of the work that we're doing around the SEND transformation. So firstly, we've, following a governance review of the SEND programme, we've refreshed our board structures, and we've appointed a new independent chair to lead the SEND Strategic Partnership Board, who's called Andre Imich, and he's starting the first meeting in a few weeks' time. We're showing improvements in meeting our statutory duties to issue EHCPs in 20 weeks, which has been consistent and in line with our targets for the last 3 months from October to December. We've been doing multi-agency auditing work of the quality of our EHCPs, which is now embedded, and some of the key areas of learning, including more work on capturing the child's voice and the lack of health social input, is being taken forward. We've just updated our joint strategic needs assessment, and this will inform a joint commissioning strategy with the ICB and a clear commissioning plan going forward, and on how we utilise the best use of resources and meet needs. This month, we're also launching a new procurement framework for independent special schools and alternative education providers. This month, we're also launching a new EHCP banding framework to support consistency in financial decision makings around EHCPs. And to tackle some of the root cause issues, we focused on strand 4 of the transformation work, which is around building inclusive communities. And for that work, we've appointed some independent strategic advisors to drive that work forward and really engage with schools. The Inclusion and Learning full conference is actually taking place right now, hence why I'm stepping in to give this update, and that's bringing together the 3 locality teams to really drive forward the planning and the work. And finally, the Communication and Relationship Standard is now being finalised, and that's going to come to the SEND, going to be discussed as part of the Send Away Day at the end of February. So that is a summary of some of the key headlines. There's lots and lots of other work, but that's just some of the key messages.
Thank you, Sally, very much indeed for that. Members from outside of Cabinet, anybody like to say anything on that? If not Cabinet, anybody like to comment on that? Councillor Denise Bickley, please.
I just wanted to say thank you to Sally and to Kelly and the team. I think you can hear from the verbal update of just 1 month's progress how many strands need to come together to improve the whole journey. And I think January is going to be an exciting month. There's so many things coming to fruition at the moment, so it's moving quite rapidly.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else there? In which case, we don't take a vote on that. We just thank Sally for the update. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 18, delegated actions. There are none. So we move on to agenda item 19, the forward plan. This was previously published and circulated on the 6th of January 2025. So we don't need to take a vote on that, but I'm hoping we are all agreed to move forward with those. Yes, good. Nobody has said otherwise. In which case, I need now to move us into part 2 with this form of words: that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the